Dear Santa, I've been a very good boy this year and have worked very, very hard to get all my models done. I've taken very good care of my brushes and I didn't let any paint dry in my airbrush. For Christmas, since I've been so good, I hope to ask for a few things. I would like a Games Workshop Citadel trademark paint handle, and I would also like Agrax Earthshade and Nuln Oil from the Games Workshop Citadel trademark paint system.
Dear Santa, I've taken good care of the paints you got me last year, and none of them have dried out except for Corax White. Paint pots, am I right? LOL. Anyways, I would like to ask you for some model kits. I would like a Start Collecting Gloomspike Git set, the new Gazgul, and if you think I've been a good boy, a Stompa.
And an XV-95 Ghost Keel battlesuit, a Hammerhead gunship, and an XV-8 Crisis battlesuit team.
Thank you, Santa. Love, Nick.
And a Fire Warrior breach team, and some XV-25 stealth battlesuits, and a Kroot Carnivore squad. Operation Butter Up Santa is a go. I repeat, Operation Butter Up Santa is a go.
If we're going to get Santa to bring us our plastic crack, we'll have to do the unthinkable.
Hey guys, Jay
and Nick here.
And the holidays are quickly among us, and that means we've had to put aside our wargaming and modeling, and instead, spend time with our families.
They may be losers that aren't in the hobby, but there is an easy way to bring 40K into your household and trick your family into enjoying the beautiful grim dark world of the 41st millennium.
Holiday hobby cookies and gingerbread terrain. And for those lucky souls whose family plays miniature wargames, a sweet treat to enjoy while you plunder and show grandma who's boss. But how are we going to make these cookies? Wargamers have had to be clever and make their own cookie cutters, since unfortunately, Games Workshop hasn't produced a multi-part plastic kit to make one for $80.
Today, we're going to show you how we made our own cookie cutters, how we decorated the cookies, and for you hardcore holiday hobby heroes, some 40K themed gingerbread terrain. Humans have been making sweets into fun shapes since the ancient Egyptians, and starting in the 1500s, molds were being carved out of wood. But as technology improved and the tradition spread, people demand tinsmiths to make cookie cutters. Nowadays, you can get the traditional tin cookie cutters or injected molded plastic ones. But there is another method. One so perfect your friends and family will believe you are the Void Dragon of Mars. And that is, of course, the 3D printer. But fear not, mortals who do not possess such wonderful machinery. There is another way to spice up your gaming and a delicious way to complete your wargaming table. But first, we need to know what cookie cutters to make. We had a few ideas, but we asked our patrons over on Patreon what cookies we should make, and they gave us some lovely ideas. We narrowed it down to 9 different cookie cutters. We're going with mostly 40K themed cutters as well as a hobby themed cutter. But, how are we going to turn these ideas into cookie cutters? The magic of the 3D printer can only go so far if you don't know how to 3D model. We're going to need to build a custom STL for each of the cutters that we want to make. To do that, we'll need to decide on what program we're going to use in order to build an STL for the 3D printer. I'm going to very quickly and briefly show you how to do this in Fusion 360, which is free for personal use, and a traditional CAD software like Vectorworks. You can also apply these methods in AutoCAD and even Blender. Let's start with Fusion 360. I would say this program is definitely something to try if you've never done any 3D modeling before, because I think the process of creating in the software is very easy to understand. Basically, what we're doing is making a sketch, making an outline, and extruding it. For this one, I picked the Gene Stealer cult symbol that was suggested by our Patreon supporter, Joey Flores. The first thing you do is size your symbol to an appropriate cookie proportion. I want it to be about 90mm or a little less than 4 inches. For this cookie, I wanted the symbol to be embossed into the dough instead of cutting all the way through, because the jagged edges might not cut properly and the thin parts would cook faster than the thick parts. I created a new sketch and added an oval shape to the outside and sized it to be a little less than 100mm. This will be our cutting edge. Now it's time to trace the symbol. I used the Fit Point Spline tool and added points along the edge. After that, it was time to thicken up our line work. I went back to the cutting edge sketch and used the offset tool to create a new line 0.8 millimeters away from the other line. I did this because my nozzle is 0.4 millimeters, and I found that a wall that is 2.4 millimeter lines thick is much more structural and still cuts great. I clicked Finished on the sketch and then went to edit the symbol. I did the same thing by selecting the edges and offsetting them inside 0.8 millimeters. Now the only other sketch we need to make is for the bottom. That will connect the cutting edge and the simple embossing edge together. I simply copied the cutting edge and pasted it into the bottom sketch. I then offset the line 5 millimeters and deleted the original cutting line so that there was just one oval on the sketch. You may want to turn off the other sketches in order to see if it actually was deleted. Next step was extruding all of our sketches. Make sure you click Finish Sketches and are back in the main screen. Then click Extrude. I started by making the bottom -3 millimeters, which means that our cutting edge and embossing edge will sit on top. I then extruded the symbol embossing edge to 5 millimeters and the cutting edge to 10 millimeters. The only thing left to do now is join all of the extruded bodies together and create one complete body that you can export as an STL. In Vectorworks, it's a very similar process, but there's a lot more work involved. I highly suggest using Fusion 360 for this project. It is much easier to use. For this cutter, I chose the orc symbol. I designed it for another Patreon supporter, Tyler Miller, who I know loves a good orc. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, but it's very similar using line tools to trace the shape and offsetting the line work. In Vectorworks, you have to make it create a surface by either using a polygon line tool or using the combined surface command and selecting your line work. Then you can extrude it in the same way with a -3 millimeter bottom, 5 millimeter embossing edge, and a 10 millimeter cutting edge. Then combine all these extrudes together. For this one, I actually flipped the cutter so that it would print the mirror image, which means you'll get the exact shape you designed when you press it into the dough. For this one, I also subtracted some sections to allow air to escape, use up less plastic, and allow you to push out the dough if it gets stuck. And there we have it, 2 cutters that are ready to be printed. But can you print them using standard plastic and brass nozzles? Let's talk about food safety and 3D printing. Whatever you do, don't use ABS plastic for anything that comes into contact with food or something that will be in your mouth. A lot of people just use standard PLA for cookie cutters. Technically, that's also unsafe since PLA has toxic chemicals, but it's definitely not as bad as ABS. PLA cookie cutter peeps would argue that because it comes into contact with the batter so briefly, it's fine. But I'm not going to take any chances. You can actually get food-safe PLA plastic. I got mine from filaments.ca, and it came with this handy document that shows that it's been tested for food safety and the plastic doesn't contain harmful chemicals that are in standard PLA. Now, the only problem with this filament is price. At about 48 Freedom Bucks with shipping, it's 2.5 times the price of normal PLA. But, you know, it doesn't contain lead, so I'll take it. And speaking of lead, all that food-safe plastic is wasted if you don't also get rid of all the brass, which also contains lead. I took apart the hot end and replaced those parts with stainless steel ones, and while I was there, I also took the time to clean the printer to get rid of the PLA residue. I found in my test prints using the food-safe plastic, I had to run the hot end a little hotter than I normally do at about 215 degrees Celsius, and the bed at 60 degrees Celsius. I'm starting with printing the orc symbol, Tyranid symbol, and after that, a purity seal, which was recommended by our Patreon supporter ZNewbieR, and a paint cup with brushes. These will be test cutters so I can see how well they work. While those are printing, it's time to start making the dough.
Hi, we're Martha Stewart, and we are going to barely show you how to make some cookies.
Today, we are going to make my grandmother's famous sugar cookie recipe that definitely isn't from a book.
In this bowl, we're going to add random powders.
Wow, look at all this goo! And now you're going to want to use the mixer and slowly stir in your flour. This flour was made from grain I grew outside in my backyard.
Look at all that dough.
Now the only thing left to do is call your broker and start dumping stocks. Shh, don't tell anyone.
I made some gingerbread dough, and Jay and I made some sugar cookie dough. You could find a recipe yourself, use a family one, or get store-bought dough. The cookie cutters don't lie. And speaking of that, what if you don't have a 3D printer? How can you get in the holiday spirit? You can make cookie cutters out of tin, or you can make some gingerbread terrain pieces. This one is for both our Patreon supporters Kilgore Void and a small herd of giraffes. Sorry, you'll have to share. But how the hell are we going to make some gingerbread terrain? First, I looked up some 40k buildings for inspiration, but then I remembered the Wall of Martyrs Imperial Bunker Kit that would make a cute seasonal gingerbread bunker terrain piece. I started to make this out of cardboard. This will allow me to play with the shapes without committing to a baking nightmare. I simply just looked at the image and tried to build it. If things were too big, I cut them down, or too small, I made them bigger. It was also helpful to draw it out quickly to understand the proportions of the bunker. After I was done with the cardboard, I took the measurements and drew them up in Vectorworks. From there, I was able to print out each panel so that I would have templates to cut out of the dough. It was really important to label and keep track of the pieces. Also, if you're interested in making one with us, I put the plans we used in the description below. We only ask if you make one, you share a picture of it on Instagram.
With cookie cutters and gingerbread bunkers designed, it was time for us to get baked. Nick and I first started with the gingerbread bunker. We rolled out the dough and started placing the paper cutouts of the design on top. Then we slowly went around with a knife and cut them out. We also preheated the oven, and when we had a tray full of gingerbread bunker goodness, we placed it in. We kept cutting parts out as the other ones cooked, and quickly we had all the finished pieces to the bunker.
We also had some extra gingerbread dough left over, so we decided to try out the very cute Space Marine cookie cutter that Jay and I designed. And man, it looks so good, and the cutter worked out great. We placed those cuties in the oven and they puffed up beautifully. I would say they are an adorable mixture of a typical Space Marine and the holiday spirit. And if you're interested, we have some plastic left over and we're selling these Futuristic Space Soldier cookie cutters on Etsy. I updated the design to make them use up less plastic and made them stronger. Buying these will help support the show and allow us to make more videos. Also, they are a perfect stocking stuffer. We also had enough dough to make an Adeptus Mechanicus symbol. This cookie cutter is for a Patreon supporter, Craig Turpin. We found that the gingerbread cookie dough we used was great at keeping the details of the cutters. It held its shape and didn't puff up as much. If you want to keep the embossing details of these cutters, I highly recommend using gingerbread dough. The sugar cookies, however, are a different story. The battery made tends to be crumbly, and when they are placed in the oven, it puffs and you lose a little detail. But they are still super cute. We found the thinner we went, the better the cookies turned out. We made the Tyranid symbol, purity seals, orc symbol, admux symbol, paint cups with brushes, Futuristic Space Soldiers, and Aquila for our Patreon supporter Louise Worthing, and the Mighty Bolter for Andrew Cameron, another Patreon supporter. But there is one more design that we thought would be the winner among all the others, the Primaris cookie cutter. But, well, let's just say it wasn't quite what we hoped for. I think it was a mixture of both overcomplicated design, and the dough didn't do us any favors either. We cooked up all those delicious treats, and then it was time to do some decorating, and of course, assembling.
Let's make the gingerbread bunker. We organized the parts into where they would go and used thick royal icing to glue the parts together. It actually went together really quick. We had to make some small adjustments here and there since the dough puffed up a little, but it really turned out quite nicely. We set the gingerbread bunker aside and let the icing dry while we started to figure out how we were going to do the icing on the cookies. I'm used to just taking a knife and slathering the cookie in sugary goodness, but these ones have more detail. So like a mom that watches cooking videos on Instagram more than her kids, Jay and I got piping bags, dye, and made some more royal icing. We learned that we had to make 2 bags of each color, an outline bag and a flood bag, which was also my nickname in high school. And well, it's kinda hard. Look at this bolter. We learned a lot from it. Mainly that our icing in both bags was a little too thick, so we thinned them down with a little water, and that made all the difference. Look at how much smoother these bolters are. We then tackled the rest of the cookies. Obviously, batch painting them. Batch icing them. I did the outline and Nick did the flooding. That helped us with our speed icing. And again, look at this cute Futuristic Space Soldier. It was a lot of fun to make him, and it made it a lot easier that we were able to work together to get them all done. The other winner was the bolter. It just looks great and the icing really adds to the detail.
On the flip side, the biggest loser is obviously the Primaris. It's just way too detailed, and it didn't really look much better when we added the frosting. In fact, I'm pretty sure it made it look a lot worse. Good thing we can just eat it to hide all the crimes.
And who could forget the Gingerbread Marines? Or, Gingerbread Future Soldiers. I took white icing and outlined them to make the soldiers look like a very traditional gingerbread man. After that, you can add some crushed up candy cane or some festive sprinkles. Let's take a look at all the completed cookies, but before that, we have one more giant cookie to decorate. And that is, of course, the gingerbread bunker. We added candy canes to the top, strung up some candy lights, added metal panels to the roof, and of course, put rivets all over. I think this creation would definitely make the Imperium proud.
What a fun way to celebrate the holidays with our favorite hobby. These cookies will make your grandmother believe in you again, and may even bring your parents back together from the brink of divorce. It's a lot of work to make and decorate cookies, but just like painting models, you get a lot of joy out of them when they're finished. What other cookie cutters should we have made? And hell, if it's a good idea, you may even see it next year. If you're interested in printing your own cookie cutters, you can find the link to the STLs in the description below and download them for free. And please, share the baked cookies you made. We would love to see them. The reason we're able to do this is because of our patrons over on Patreon. And this is a thank you to all of them, because without their support, a video like this wouldn't be possible. And now, the only thing left to do is open a few cold ones and have a game of Kill Team.
Oh, Space Marines, oh, Space Marines, the saviors of humanity. Oh, Space Marines, oh, Space Marines, how deadly are your bolters? Your chains are thread in battle time, are nicely clean by dinner time. Oh, Space Marines, oh, Space Marines, how much you hate those green skins.